Hey everybody, it's Eric Balance coming to you with the Resilient Minds podcast, where I feature beautiful entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and experts in their field, where they help us discover their X factor, their experience of life, only to discover how they were able to accomplish and find out their why factor, their big why, their purpose in life. So join me as we get to discover the beauty of our minds and how can we really continue to go after the biggest and most wildest dreams while we continue to pursue and manifest our greatest intelligence that comes from the heart. See you on the show.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the Resilient Minds podcast. I'm inspired and excited to sit here right now with Drew McManus. This is an amazing artist, for those of you who don't know, from Satsang, where we really are going to be talking about the power of spiritual discord. And I think that it's beautiful kind of foreshadowing, because really it's about how can we cultivate this level of resilience in our every single day. So I'm excited to welcome you, brother. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, man.
Go ahead.
I haven't done a podcast in a while, man. I've been pretty quiet, and I just kind of made the decision to start saying yes again. So you're the first podcast I've done in about a year.
Well, welcome back, bro. It's amazing to have you. And I always share, like, when I was living in Ibiza, man, there's a depth to artistic expression inside of music. And I think that artists like yourself aren't often enough asked enough questions about why they do what they do and where it comes from. And there's a really powerful discord that I think, and rhetoric that needs to be shared, because you guys have such beautiful voice. You bring it. You're able to catapult your voice with music, and also there's so much more to it, and so I'm excited to go deep, because I know that your experience of life is really what contributes to your purpose, man, and why you've set out on this journey in the first place. So before I get started, I would really just love to know a little bit, where you're calling in from, where you're at. I know you mentioned, but like let us know, let the audience know. And then, what inspired you to come back on the podcast or come back into the shows?
Well, so for the past 13 years, I've lived in a really, really small town called Red Lodge, Montana, in the Beartooth Mountains. It was always my dream to buy a house there, and I did that. And I went through a really big shift that kind of started about this time last year. Really lost for a little bit, and just me and a partner that I've been with for 13 years separated, and that was my choice. Really going through that, and I just kind of felt like isolation was the move for me as I was going through this. I think people tend to, in the modern world, we tend to make anything that we're going through really public. And I kind of wanted to take my power back in that realm of privacy and work through everything myself, and with the people closest to me. But through that, for the first time in my entire life, I have a place that's just mine. I got a house that's just mine, and I got to design and curate the space, and it feels really amazing, and I'm really creative for the first time in a long time. I feel like I just am kind of coming out of this, not even dark, just really thick period of my life, and I feel like I just have kind of landed back in my feet, and I feel more myself than I ever have. I moved down to Billings, which is the biggest city in Montana, and absolutely am loving it. There's like a lot of benefits to living in a small mountain town, but if you want like food past 8 p.m., that's not available You know, it's like all of the conveniences of the modern world are pretty much out the window. So it's been really nice. And also I travel all the time, you know, and now instead of living an hour and 20 minutes from the airport, I live 7 minutes from the airport, which has been so great because all of the flights out of here to make connection flights are at 6 a.m. So instead of waking up at 3 a.m. to catch my flights, I can roll out of bed and be at the airport in under 10 minutes. So, but yeah, just it feels like, yeah, it's time to kind of be open again and be out and seeing. So yeah, the timing of you asking me to be on the podcast was pretty interesting because I was just literally having a conversation like 3 days ago with a close friend of mine of like, okay, I think I'm ready to talk again. So
amazing. And so you see how the universe, it's so fascinating how you just bring it into existence and it shows up.
yeah, that seems to be how it goes for me.
Do you think that, you know, more of our, you know, future generations need to be aware of this possibility that, hey, like if I want to really create from my heart space, that they are able to follow it? Because I don't know about you, but I was born into a society that told me that I needed to do everything outside of me and not follow these types of things. So maybe take us back to your experience of life and what really maybe were some of your encounters that made you follow your heart.
I had a couple, you know, I had a really hard life growing up. I was in a really abusive household. I felt really alone. I didn't really know anybody that was having the same experience as me. But I also feel like really young, I had a pretty good grasp on the type of life that I wanted. I like my earliest memories, I just remember I knew I wouldn't have a normal life. I knew I would never wear a suit. I knew I would never have a normal job. Yeah, I kind of always knew I was going to do music or be a painter or a poet. You know, I was really inspired by the Grateful Dead and Allen Ginsberg and Kerouac and that kind of whole beat culture that was going on in the late 50s and through the 60s, and Hunter S. Thompson. And I just kind of knew that there was an alternative way to live life. So I kind of started seeking out those kind of thinkers, you know, the Alan Watts. Alan Watts was very huge for me, Ram Dass. And I just always had a pretty good grasp that I wasn't my body, you know, that I really was kind of on a spiritual quest. And this was just kind of the vehicle I was given to navigate it. Which I think just kind of...
When did you come into that awareness? Sorry to interrupt, but I just really think that that's an important point.
I did LSD for the first time when I was 14 years old. And I think that was really... you know, I had been open to that idea before, right? And had heard that notion. I don't think I fully understood it. But yeah, my first psychedelic experience really drove that point home. And from then on out, I had a pretty solid grasp on that being the case. And then a really pivotal moment for me, I didn't really have any mentors growing up or people that I could look up to that I knew personally. Everyone was, you know, writers that weren't around anymore, people that I had never met. But I had an art teacher in high school named Daniel Weiss, who was so pivotal for me. I told him everything. He was the only adult in my life that really knew what was going on and what I thought about it at all times. And he caught me stealing art supplies when I was like 15 years old. And I had never heard him yell before, and he yelled. And at the end of his yelling, he said, "I think you're a real artist. I don't think you need school. I don't think you're going to live a life that everyone else is headed towards. I think you're just going to be a fucking artist." And that was super profound for me. It was like I was given permission. I really looked up to Mr. Weiss because he was a real artist. And was such a deep guy. And when he said that, I just was like, okay, cool. Well, now it's been confirmed. That's what I'm going to do. And yeah, man, been pretty much chasing that ever since. Had some detours. But yeah, I think with young people, the more we can drive that point home to them, they live in such a self-centered culture, and our culture is kind of curated that everyone cares what you're up to. With the idea, just basic shit, right? Like selfies and Instagram stories. There's kind of this narrative that they need to be sharing their external view all of the time, right? Everyone's ideas should be put out on. So it just kind of forms this self-centered culture that's kind of done away with altruism and spirituality. And I think the biggest thing with kids, if we can plant that seed, that's just letting them know that this human experience is just kind of the tip of the iceberg of what we're doing here. And I think nature is like the greatest segue that I've seen in my children, is taking them out into nature is usually the best way to breach that subject of how small they really are.
So tell me about this. When you mean this self-centeredness, because I think it's a really great point of what you're seeing, that today's kind of culture, pop culture, is talking about, hey, we need to go out there and like share everything or all of our perspectives. How do you see things in regards to that, and how does that come back to nature? How do you see that kind of fit with one another?
Well, I think our culture is really focused on things that don't matter. So like if you go back, we've never really held vanity at the standard that we hold it now. Like we have a lot of people in our culture that are famous for being famous, where previously to be famous, you had to be really good at something or have really good ideas. Like how that whole beat scene took off it was people sharing ideas that no one had ever heard before. It was this idea that there was another way to live your life, and these people kind of became famous and infamous because of their ideas. So it was their minds that were kind of leading the charge, and fame was an unfortunate byproduct of their ideas. I saw a thing a while back that said they asked, I think it was 1,000 American kids between the ages of 13 and 17 what they wanted to be when they grew up, and over 80% of them said an influencer. And it's kind of a troubling thing, because you ask them, well, what the fuck is an influencer? Like, what does that mean? It means, okay, you're an influencer, so you're influencing culture. What do you have to bring to culture to enhance it? Are you going to dress cool? Are you just going to, give makeup tips? Like all of this shit that doesn't matter. We're back in the day, to be a cultural influencer, you had to have really good ideas. Like you had to write a good book, or you had to make really good music. That was what made you a cultural influencer. And I think the magic of nature is, I think we get caught in our own little pods of consciousness. And, the whole idea of social media is this thing of like, I'm curating this experience so you understand me. I'm putting things out so you understand me as a whole. And there's just something about nature that just kind of shuts all that shit down. The river doesn't care about how many Instagram followers you have. The mountain doesn't care about how many Instagram followers you have. It's been here before you. It will be here after you. And I found with my kids, kind of guiding those conversations in the wilderness and explaining them like how old everything they're seeing is, that it took billions of years to form these things, and that they're here, always here. My good friend Trevor Hall said to me one time, it's a quote that I come back to all of the time. I was having a really hard time. I had been dropped by an agent, and I was really a mess about it. Thought my career was over. He said, sometimes it's good to remember that a mountain is still a mountain and a river is still a river. There's something about the simplicity of that, of just like, yeah, man, like that thing's still moving. Like the natural order of this planet, there's not enough selfies in the world to stop that natural order from running its course. So I think nature is spirituality. Like by nature, that's what it is.
and we can learn, I think, a lot in our cultural expression from it. And I love how you put those two together, because there's a natural narrative that, our culture can be cultivated. Like, I always think of, like, when we're encapsulating new culture or today's culture day and age, how can we unify more of these nature or principles of nature? And what does that look like when we're really moving through these different levels of consciousness and different perspectives of the world? So really, does it matter, what another person's belief system is or religion is, if at the end of the day, our highest level of capacity is a value or a principle? And how can then, as a result of that, us come together more? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the only antidote for the laws of nature is spirituality. Because the laws of nature says that you and I's bodies will eventually quit on us, and they will turn to nothingness and go back to the earth. That is just the way of it. That's how this thing goes. It does not matter if you are a frog or a human or a bear. The shell that encapsulates your soul, it's going to die, and it's going to wither away and feed the earth. So the only antidote for that, I believe, the only antidote for the kind of sad nature of those laws of nature is spirituality, and that depth of understanding and finding that knowing that isn't like that I am actually a spiritual entity having a human experience. And the more I identify with my body, the harder it's going to be. And which is what kind of is concerning about the kind of social media culture and this idea of, somebody being famous just because of their attractiveness or because of the shell that they happen to land in. It's like, well, it's not really something to applaud. Like, that's great. That's great that was the avatar you were given, but that's going to quit on you. Like, what then? Which is why I think there's so much, I think we're seeing a huge pull simultaneously, as weird as our culture is. I think we're seeing a really huge pull, at least I have in my time, and just meeting fans and being at different festivals and retreats and stuff, and meeting older people that have done all of the things, that have acquired money, built a giant company, or have done whatever to acquire a bunch of money, and they found out that wasn't it. That everything they had been told was going to bring them happiness and fulfillment hasn't. So I think we're also at a time where people are seeking more than they ever have, which is really exciting for me as an artist, to kind of be standing in the wings, ready to inspire whoever wants to ask that question of, like, what's the thing past the thing, which is really my goal with music. Because for me, it's the only thing I found where I get to kind of dance between here and that other place. Like, I kind of leave my body, if we're doing it right, if the show is going well, I'm somewhere in between here and the ethereal. And I've completely disassociated with myself as a body. And I'm like somewhere in the in-between, and I think that's why people go to festivals and go to concerts and stuff too, is because we're doing that dance together. So people kind of get a break from their humanness. And that's always what music has been for me, man. That's why I've always been so drawn to it, is there's just this magic place between here and the other place that we get to hang out in for an extended period of time, and that you can access it without chemical assistance,
This is the true artistic language that I think is really magical for a lot of people to come into contact with. And I really commend you for stepping into that role and that responsibility, because it's also a level of awakening that you're naturally offering to your audience. And so it's really beautiful that your band's called Satsang, right? Yep. And the meaning behind that, and maybe we can talk about why you chose that name and why it's super meaningful to you.
I feel like it kind of chose me.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah. So like I said, I always kind of knew I wanted to do music. I just didn't really know where to start. And when I had first moved to Red Lodge, pretty much all I did, I worked at a gear shop that sold climbing gear, backpacking gear, and stuff like that. And then in the winter, I worked at a ski resort. So I was always outside. My whole life revolved around being in nature. Like, in the winter, it was skiing. In the spring, it was ice climbing. In the summer and fall, it was rock climbing and fly fishing. And my whole life just kind of revolved around these cycles for years. I took this job. I made no money. I made no money living that lifestyle. And I was offered to take this job to go do seismographic surveying in Utah, where the job is essentially hiking through that Moab area 7 days a week for 3 months. And I was paid like $350 a day. So I took that job, came home with more money than I had ever had. I think I had probably $5,000-$6,000. And the plan was that I was going to buy a car. I ended up using that money to go to Nepal, to go on a backpacking trip in Nepal. I spent every penny of it. But while I was in Nepal, I did these 3 big mountain passes. Most people go up a valley and they're like, go to Everest, Everest base camp and then back out. And me and my friend Pete did this big circle and went over all of the mountain passes. There was so much to that trip for me. The realization of every single place that you get to is kind of the same. There's a monastery and there's a little tea house that you can sleep in and eat. That's all that's in every village. And on like the 4th day, I kept kind of being like, fuck, man, like, oh, how far until that village? And then you kind of realize, well, every village is just the same. It's the walk. That's what the trip is the journey. The journey is the trip. It's not there is no destination. Every destination is just a mirror of the last one. But the day we hit Renjo Pass was the halfway mark of the trip. So I'm like sitting at 20,000 feet, a million prayer flags flapping. I'm staring at Mount Everest. And it just kind of hit me like, okay, man, once you start walking down, you're on your way home. Like the first half of the trip, you were on your way here, but now you're on your way home. What are you going to do? What happens when you get home? And it just hit me while I was up there. It was like, it's music. It's always been music. And I pulled out my journal and I wrote the song Thrill of It All. And then the next day I wrote The Story of You, and I didn't have a guitar. So I was just like writing these songs, didn't know how they would sound. And right before I went home, I was in Kathmandu and I went to this like outdoor climbing gym, this big like climbing wall in the middle of Kathmandu, and met this kid from Holland. And we were just hanging out and smoking and climbing. And when I was leaving, he's like, hey, we're having Satsang later. You should come. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but he wrote down Satsang on a piece of paper with an address and gave it to me. And when I got back to my hotel, I Googled the word Satsang and the meaning, a spiritual discourse to find truth, or in the company of truth. I was like, boom, I got a name. Like, that's what I'm going to call this thing as soon as I get home. Like, that's it. That's the name. So it's just, 10 years ago, some kid from Holland, I had never heard that word before. And when I saw what it meant, I was like, that's what I want to do. That's what the goal of this thing is to get people together
and speak truth. And it's magic because, there's something that I'm really fascinated. Do you mind if I ask how old you are?
35.
So at 25 years old, you were able to hear the universe speak to you.
Yeah, I think I was at a place. I think I was at a place where you can really hear it if you're paying attention. I mean, the Himalaya is if you want to hear the universe speak to you, I think that's a good place to go.
Yeah. And today, how do you hear it?
I think post Nepal, and as I've matured, I think that antenna just kind of stays up. You know, like I just kind of have understood that if I'm feeling really called to something or really pushed away from something, that is the universe, and that's kind of how it communicates. It communicates to us through our gut. And when we get those feelings, it's just like, I don't know, I'm feeling really pushed away from this thing. It's like, okay, well, don't do it. The universe is communicating with your body and telling you that's not for you. And then sometimes we have an idea that might not make sense to anyone else, but we feel it deep. And that's the universe telling you, like, yeah, this is for you, man. It doesn't matter if anyone else understands it. This is for you. It's not for them. You know, another thing, my best friend Brady, super deep cat, runs a company called Go Fast Don't Die. You know, I found a lot of spirituality through my motorcycle too. But one thing that him and I talk about all of the time is this kind of way to simplify the human experience is, and if you're in line with the universe and you're actually trusting that, the things that are meant for you, you can't keep from you. And the things that aren't meant for you, you can't get. So it makes it really easy to keep you from like pawing and clawing at things that you want that aren't meant for you. And realizing that you're going to get exactly what you're supposed to get. And all you have to do is show up and be the best version of yourself. It's taken so much of my stress. It's taken so much of my stress and anxiety of believing that and feeling that and trusting that whatever is in store for me, I'm going to get, and whatever isn't, I can't get even if I want it.
How can you, for anybody that's listening, how can one get to this place? And maybe you can share an experience or ways that you are allowing yourself to surrender even more every day.
You know, I've had a couple, like, especially in my career. I for so long didn't understand why my band wasn't bigger than it was, because of the amount of work that I put in and how much we toured and how much this and how, you know, and that comparison game, and that comparison, man, is the thief of joy. You know, if you're looking at other people and how come I don't have what they have? How come? Because that's not fucking meant for you, man, because it's not yours. And there's just been so many times in my career where I thought I wanted something that someone else had. You know, I think the biggest example is I've seen people who run their bands as this like democracy with a bunch of, like, you have one person that's writing the song, doing the majority of the work, but they've set up their band where everyone is getting an equal share of everything, even if one person is doing all of the work. And I very early on set up the business because I had people kind of coming and going. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to set this up as mine. And I became obsessed with owning all of my music. So early on, way before the band was worth anything or before anyone was listening, I was buying everybody out. If you worked on a record for me, I would pay you really, really well. And I would keep all of the rights to the music. And I stuck to that model. And then when COVID hit, I saw how many artists were struggling, and I wasn't struggling at all because of owning my music. You know, I make residual money every month without touring. At this point, touring is something I do to just kind of keep the ball rolling, and I do it because I enjoy it, because I love playing music live. It's not something I have to do, and I see a lot of bands that have had to become kind of enslaved by that tour cycle, because if they don't do it, they can't eat. And bands that are way bigger than me, you know, bands that are way bigger than me, that I used to say, man, I wish I had their life. I wish I had their life. And realizing like, no, man, and then becoming friends with those people and then being like, man, I wish I set it up like you did. And realizing too, that the thing never ends. You know, I have friends that sell 1,000 tickets a night and they wish they sold 3,000 a night. I have friends that sell 3,000 a night that wish they sold 10,000 a night. And it's just like, I've kind of given up that chase. you know, and I think during that COVID time of just getting to remove myself from the music industry for a while, just realized I'm okay, and that like I'm fine, I'm doing fine. People are feeling what I'm doing. It might not be on this grand scale that I wish it was or thought it should be or whatever, but my life is beautiful, and it's mine, and everything has just worked out, you know, and keeps working out. You know, another thing that Trevor said to me one time, I don't remember what I was tripping about, and he's like, you know, man, you have no evidence to point to that it's not going to work out. It keeps working out for you, and you spend so much time stressing out about what if it doesn't work out, but it keeps working out. You know, and that that just hit me really heavy of like, how much time do we spend suffering these imaginary tragedies where like we sit in the worst case scenario and let it biologically affect us? You know, we feel it in our stomachs and our throat and our chest, and we feel this heaviness for something that hasn't even happened, that probably won't.
This is profound and so true. I mean, we've all been there. You know, most people have been there anyways, and I think that by you sharing, it allows people to say, hey, like it's okay to feel this level of uncertainty and then really step into a level of trust. And so what would you say for anyone that, you know, maybe is a new artist or up and coming artist or musician that really wants to go the deeper way and really wants to go to that 1,000, 10,000, you know, audience, and, you know, have those tickets sold and, you know, have their album and build their momentum? What would you tell them right now?
I guess I would say focus on the music more than anything, and hard work is, there is no, I think another side effect of this like social media driven culture is we see these weird examples of, you know, I point to this kid, Zach Bryan, all the time, phenomenal fucking singer songwriter, you know, was making these videos, you know, recorded on an iPhone of him and his buddies drinking beer and him singing these songs, and he said they went viral. And then he, you know, recorded this very simple album in a shed with one microphone, and it blew up, you know, and now he's playing stadiums. And I would say don't pay attention to stuff like that, because that's like a 1 in a trillion thing. And that really the way is make really authentic music and tour it and trust it. Like it's hard. And really the name of the game is don't quit. It's not how big can you get, it's can you not quit? Because it's not a fair industry. It's not a meritocracy. You're going to make better music than other people around you that's really heartfelt, and you're going to see really cheesy garbage get pushed. And you just can't let it affect your process. You know, another story that I tell all the time, the song I Am, which has given me my entire life, like the amount of security that song has given my family. It got us a house. It's gotten us groceries when I couldn't tour. Like that song has done so much in my life. And when I wrote it, I didn't care for it really. I wrote that one for me. And it kind of felt like an overshare, and I wasn't really sure if I should release that song. And thank God I did, because this, you know, aside from what it's given me, the stories that people have shared with me, what that song's done in their life. So I was just tell people, man, don't overthink this shit. Like, you know, the story of you was done on $100 microphone in my office, you know, and that song is responsible for my entire career. That album is responsible for my entire career. So yeah, don't be a perfectionist, man. If it feels authentic, if you feel like what I'm writing really represents my view of the world, and I think people can connect with it, then just put it out and don't overthink it. I see a lot of people get like frozen in this perfectionism. And it's like, you know, like I'll ask you, would you rather like a super produced record from me that is from like, you know, where I hire like the best fucking players in the country and like a super, you know, world renowned pop producer? or would you want to sit in a living room with me while I played the guitar and sang?
Every day in the living room, brother.
Right, right.
Every day.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
been a big epiphany for me the last 2 years of like,
Yeah.
most people just want it to be real,
Yeah.
you know?
And
So
this comes back to that truth, right? This comes back to that satsang. Like, let's really be real with each other. And so whether it's in music or in business or in communication or in culture, like, how can we just have these like level of connection with one another that is so real? Because and as men, I'm certain, we're about the same age, bro. I'm 36. So, I was born into an era or into an age where it was like, manliness, what the fuck did that mean? You know what I mean? Like, it was like totally this wrong idea of what it meant to be a man. In my perspective, it was like, hey, you need to fucking be a badass. You need to go break some shit. You need to like be this macho guy. That just, I needed to like unravel that and let that shit go, because it wasn't, and it's not what the future needs either. You know what I mean? And this is the real thing, man. Like, we deserve to share that together among our brothers and sisters, to like step up into a capacity where, hey, like, we can be strong and kind and sweet.
yeah, I think that's just it. I found a lot of value in Stoicism, in the great Stoics, Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and Epictetus. And they talk a lot about that, because you think Marcus Aurelius was kind of an anomaly because he was a great warrior and a general. And but most of those great thinkers, like if you were a philosopher in that time, your job was to kind of sit around and think. You were valued by culture to sit around and think and write what you were thinking about, which I think is just the coolest thing ever. What a job. But I found a lot of value in Stoicism. And there's a book that is so huge, I would be shocked if you haven't read it, called The Four Agreements, written by Don Miguel Ruiz. And I think those are so crucial, and I think a huge one for men, really for anyone, but with young men especially, the idea of not taking everything personally. There's this again, it's this notion that we're kind of each the center of the universe, and that the world is happening to us and at us, and it sets up a weird thing where it kind of can take the sweetness out of people, because they believe everything around them is happening to them and at them. But it's like, that's just not actually the laws of the universe. The universe is just occurring, and everyone is just trying to get by. So things happen, and people say things and do things where you weren't even thought of, but it seems like you were. It seems like it's happening at you. The biggest thing, especially in the music industry, that I've learned is I just take nothing personally, and I just have to trust that's what's meant for me is going to come, because it keeps happening that way. And the more that I give into that, the less stress that I have. Yeah, and that idea of manliness is it makes people do really interesting things. I am a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I have fought. I coach young fighters. And for me, fighting is a very spiritual thing. It is not to me, it's not an overtly manly thing. It's just something that I feel really called to, and something that I'm good at, so I pursue it. And I feel like the people I know that are fighters are some of the most well-adjusted. Their egos are the most well-adjusted of anybody. What we see in this idea of toxic masculinity is just really unhealthy ego and insecurity that makes people lash out. They think their manhood is in question, and no one's questioning it, but they think it's in question all the time, because they themselves are questioning it all the time, which just it makes authentic communication impossible. If someone's ego is making them question their every move and sentence and thought and how they're being presented, and you can't have an authentic experience with somebody like that. It's impossible, because their ego is like driving the bus, rather than this sweet adjusted soul driving the bus.
This is beautiful, bro. And I know I know that that was an experience that I know for myself as I was growing up. I thought that was the nature, you know what I mean? That was what we needed to do. And I think that, you know, martial arts is really a great core identifier of allowing that flow to really come through you and, you know, just represent itself kind of like as you, so that you can start to embody a more of this wholesome individual, man or woman, right? And I think that that's a really beautiful, you know, adjustment for, like you said, a lot of people that are inside of and experiencing martial arts embody a very egoless persona where they step into a more responsible role in physical form. And so what would you say for anybody that, you know, is going down this path of wanting to learn more about, you know, spiritual discord or embodying principles of nature? What would you say to them? And maybe, you know, you can even share it in one of your songs if you'd like. I would totally be up to hearing one of your songs if you feel. But like, if you would to emanate this essence of presence, right? As an individual that's wanting to embody that and wanting to like step back into their level of congruence, what would you share with somebody that is maybe first time ever hearing us speak right now?
I would say be a student, you know, approach life like a student. It's hard to have an ego when you're approaching anything as a student. I think that's kind of the magic of especially Brazilian jiu-jitsu, is I think a lot of people, you know, the amount of times I've seen really huge muscly dudes, you know, come in and, you know, some 17-year-old skinny stoner is crawling all over their back and choking them repeatedly. It humbles them. So you see someone hit this fork in the road that says like, okay, I can either walk out that door, never return, and just convince myself that this was a fluke and I do know how to fight and this was just a freak thing, or you can become a student and you can say to that person half your size, hey, I need you to teach me because I want to understand why you're able to do what you're doing to me. And when you apply that to life at a greater scale, of just being a student of the human experience, man, of approaching everything, you know, again, like the antidote to that everything's happening to me is that everything's happening for me. So like, I really believe if we pray for patience, you're not just going to wake up a super patient person. You're going to be put in situations where you can practice patience. So I always am trying to just approach life as a student. And when things happen to me that are hard or confusing, I try to see them as an opportunity to work a new muscle. That it isn't me, the center of the universe, and now this thing is happening to me. And ouch, that hurts. It's like, oh shit, okay, class is in session. I should get my notebook out and be taking notes, because the sooner that I can figure out how to get through hard things calmly and kind of untie the problem, your life just starts to get easier and easier when you're approaching it from that place, that everything is an opportunity to learn, and that we always have that choice, you know, that you can settle into the victim role or you can settle into the student role, and those are really our only two options as this thing unfolds in front of us.
Epic, bro, epic. The eternal student, you know, I love to use that, you know, it's a great way of depicting, you know, and also then recognizing that that great mirror is really the eternal teacher, you know what I mean, everywhere we look, right? And so this becomes this great symbiosis. So I'm curious, bro, so what's going on with tours? What's going on with the next concerts? Like what are you doing? Where are you headed? What's on the map?
It's going to be a super busy year for me. I have all of July off, which I'm super excited about. I'm going to just hang out with my son. In August, early August, me and the boys are doing a really cool run and just some of the most beautiful places like Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. Absolutely gorgeous mountain run. I'm really excited for that run. We also haven't seen each other since March, so that'll be cool. A couple festivals in September, and then at the end of September, we're going on tour, like a full tour. We'll be in the Midwest, all over. I don't remember where all we're going, but we're going to be out for like about a month. And then in November, I'm going to Australia, which I'm so excited about. I wanted to go down there for years. So yeah, I'm doing a solo tour in Australia.
Amazing. You're doing it by yourself, just you. Is there anybody that you would like support with, or would go together with, or anybody that you'd love to do that with? Or
well, I'm not sure how this first tour will go. If they'll find like local support. There's a couple Australian artists that I really like. There's this kid named Kyle Lionheart that if you haven't heard, you should check out.
Yeah,
one of the most amazing voices that I've ever heard. And he's an Australian fella, and him and I have talked about doing us playing together in Australia, and then him coming to the States to play with us.
nice.
So we'll see. You know, Xavier Rudd, that would be a dream to get to play with him down there. But he's another one. He's an artist that I really respect the way he set up his life. He disappears off the fucking face of the earth, shows up and does like a 7-week tour every year, and then disappears again. And then that's the goal for me. That is the model for me, is to just do 1 tour a year eventually, and then fall off the map the rest of the year. But yeah, and then after Australia, then in January, I'm gonna do a solo tour down the West Coast, which I'm really excited about. The solo shows for me, man, I always say the shows with the band are really fun. Yeah. It's the most fun that I have in my life is playing with all the boys. But it's a different vibe. We have a sound guy and a tour manager and a bus, and it's this whole thing. But something about just sitting in a room with everybody else seated and playing the songs, it just does something really magic for me. It makes me like get right back into the heart of the music. So this year I've been really trying to find the balance between solo shows and full band shows, because I really like playing by myself.
Yeah. So, I think there's a lot of beauty in also like you said, doing like a support, like a bunch of different amazing like singles, you know what I mean, where you would play and then Xavier or like Kyle, you know what I mean, it would be really cool to bring like a symbiosis of all of that together to Australia, and like do a full band together, like not necessarily all together on the same stage at the same time, but you know what I mean, man. It would we should create it, bro. Just like make it happen.
Well, the dream is, you know, this first trip to Australia, we're kind of taking the temperature, right? So if I go and we sell a bunch of tickets, you know, then the world is kind of our oyster, you know, then Australia becomes a part of every year. So yeah, I'm excited to see how it goes. The people, Love Police, which is the booking agency and promotion company that put it together, they're feeling really good about it. Which I've never been to Australia, so that makes me feel pretty good about it, because I have no idea.
You're gonna love it there. They're gonna love you. I used to live there for 2 years. It was amazing.
Where did you live at?
I lived in Brisbane.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Where are you at now? Where do you live now?
I'm in Canada, in Edmonton, Alberta.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But yeah, dude, you're gonna love it there, and they're gonna love you, man. It's there's a lot of good people, and like a lot of good people going to Australia this year. Like Nick Mulvey's going there, a friend of mine. You know, really like a lot of great artists are wanting to really show up there, and I think that because of the borders opening, it's just a prime opportunity for a lot of great people to step into that nature. And yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity too of having you know, these separate artists work together. I think there's a lot of gifts in that capacity. Something that I think I'd love to really help more artists come together, because I think we can unify more people and utilize each other's kind of understanding, but then share it as a bigger movement. And so it just helps each other. So
Yeah, I agree. I'm always open for collaboration and stuff. I think that's some really magic shit happens when we do that.
yeah, I agree. You're epic, bro. So I know we got a few minutes to go, but I just wanted to ask you, you know, I know you have how's the relationship with your boy, with your family, man? I'm just curious to know.
So good, man. Me and him are so tight. I love him so much. Yeah, you know, this split has been a little different, you know, he's adjusting to that. But what's really cool is me and my ex-partner live a block away from each other. We both moved to Billings and we live like a block from each other. So that's been super convenient. And his school is 1 block from both of us. So like his school's here, and then up these 2 streets is where we live. So we're in the process of figuring out, you know, a good system of how he can see both of us most days. But yeah, man, he's my best friend. Yeah, he just turned 5 in April. But yeah, he is my best bud. And I'm really excited. His mom is going to Europe in July for 2 weeks. So it'll just be me and him. I'm going to take him to the Black Hills. He's just like at the perfect age to like remember all of the shit. So yeah, we're going to like do the reptile gardens. We're going to go in a cave. Yeah, he's my best buddy, dude. I take him with me everywhere. And
I can feel the love, bro. You know, like my pops is such a big an inspiration for me. Without my dad, I probably would be, you know, not even alive right now. And so I just want to really say thank you for, you know, just being a great dad. You know, it's definitely the reason that why I'm even alive, because of my father and just like the massive king he is, you know. So we have a great responsibility. I can't wait to be a dad myself. So I'm just
man, it is my biggest goal that my son as an adult says something like you just said. That is I want that more than I want a fucking Grammy or to sell more tickets and anything. And if that is what I get at the end of this ride, is that my adult son calls me a king, I'm success beyond belief.
That means a lot, man. Thank you for sharing that, because that I sometimes don't understand, you know, and you don't realize how much your parents really have saved and supported you on the journey. And so massive gratitude for you, bro. I'm really grateful for your time, your energy, your kindness and compassion. If you had 3 days left to live, Drew, what would you do?
I would clean out my bank account and buy a motorcycle that my son could fit on. Because right now my motorcycle doesn't accompany a second person. And probably go somewhere up on the Beartooth Mountains, outside Red Lodge. Yeah, and would probably just want to spend those days with him outside. Yeah, would probably, just want to sit at Black Canyon Lake with my son for 3 days and watch the sun come up and go down.
Beautiful, bro. Thank you again, man. Is there any last comments or words you want to share?
No, keep an eye out. I'm you know, through this little process that I just went through, this transition and this kind of isolation, as it were, I wrote some really beautiful stuff that I'm excited to share, that I'm going to start recording this fall. So yeah, keep an eye out. I have what I believe is my best batch of songs to date, that will be on their way in the next year. So yeah, and keep an eye out, man. We're traveling, we're out there.
Amazing. And if anybody wants to know about your dates or any of the the albums or the future, like, where's the best place to find all the resources?
Satsangmovement.com.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And I'll have them in the show notes as well.
Hey everyone, and thank you so much for listening to the Resilient Minds. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please make sure to go comment and like and follow us on iTunes or Spotify, and please make sure that if you really love this, to share this episode, and make sure that you're inviting all your friends to like it as we continue to unfold what the beauty of our minds does, more importantly, how powerful our heart level of intelligence can be when we combine our heart and our brain together. And more importantly,
make sure you take the time to take a look at what we're doing at Balanced Media Ventures and how we can actually really support you in doubling your impact, your income, and your influence, and how you can bring your life's greatest vision into your purpose and create it from that level of reality. Talk to you soon.